Are the pitching woes finally over for the Dbacks as they add a first-round pick former all-star to the rotation? We're talking the Mike Soroka signing and more right now on the Dbacks podcast.
Baseball is back.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send the ball all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
It's Alec Thomas from the Diamondbacks.
Former Major League Baseball player Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, where we're proud to bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk from across the pond here in London. We are proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast, and boy, do we have some tea to spill for you tonight. And no, it's not that it's cold as hell here in London, even though, yes, I have got my piping hot mug of tea as usual. And no, it's not that Gabby Moreno is playing first base right now in the Dominican Winter League, although that is actually something very interesting that raises a lot of questions, and we'll talk about that probably next week. Instead, we're going to start off today's episode with some good news, everyone. Bet you didn't see a Futurama reference coming to start off the day. But that good news is that finally, at long last, the Diamondbacks have signed a pitcher. We knew that an arm had to come through the door eventually, but it was a long time coming, especially as the relief market really picked up and some prices started to get real inflated. The arm in question is one Mike Soroka, who has signed out of free agency to a one-year deal with a reported $7.5 million guaranteed and a further $2 million in potential bonuses. The move, of course, comes as Arizona's first of the winter meetings and likely won't be the last, as we're desperately seeking new pitching of a higher caliber than what we wound up with last year. Now, Mike Soroka fits the D-backs mold pretty well, if that mold, as we all know, being inconsistent pitchers who had promise but also struggle with injuries and reliability. The very first thing that comes to mind on seeing the news is, of course, Soroka's fabled Achilles tendon, which has been seriously injured thrice in his career. Although let's be thankful we aren't gambling on a Jordan Montgomery type whose elbow is held together with Scotch tape and Elmer's glue. The move, as we speak, even, is pending a physical examination, which, of course, is standard for free agent signings, but that seems to be more of a talking point than you'd usually expect, which maybe points to some underlying anxiety about elbows and Achilleses. On that one, we'll just have to wait and see. So, with the elephant in the room out of the way, the next question is a simple one. Is he any good? So, with a quick run through of his career so far, I mentioned at the top of the show he was a first-round pick way back in 2015, signing with the Atlanta Braves. He made his debut in 2018 and was an all-star the following year, where his 13-4 record and a 2.68 ERA had him 6th in NL Cy Young voting. He only managed 3 appearances in 2020 before a long injury stint ruled him out of 2021 and 2022. And he was a member of the 2024 White Sox, posting an 0-10 record, being used both as a starter and in long relief. In 2025, he began the year as a Washington National, making 17 starts and posting a 4.87 ERA before being traded to the Cubs, where he made 1 start and a further 5 appearances out of the pen, rejuvenating his form quite a lot and pitching to a 1.08 ERA in the Windy City with a total of 8 innings pitched. He did also miss some time with a shoulder injury in the second half of last year too, so he doesn't seem to be completely out of the woods yet on that front either, which, isn't great. At face value, this signing does seem like something of a gamble by the D-backs. An inconsistent and injury-plagued pitcher who hasn't posted a WAR above 1 since 2019 doesn't exactly scream solution to the well-documented pitching woes of 2025. But in reality, I think this is a savvy move by the front office at the end of the day. While yes, we'd all have loved to have seen the D-backs splashing cash and going after the big-name arms, the reality is they likely have to work on a budget this offseason, and getting Soroka, on the surface at least, buys you a lot of innings at a relatively reasonable price given the big bucks that are flying around for some of the other relievers we've seen signing recently. Ryan Helsley getting paid over at the Orioles is a good example of a name we'd of course like to have seen in a Serpientes jersey, but was always unrealistic given the kind of money that's involved. However, there's still a twist to this rattlesnake tale. Yeah, see what I did there. And that is that Soroka is expected to be part of the starting rotation come spring training, not to be used out of the pen, where he's had his most recent success. This is something of a surprise, sure, but it makes sense when you dig a little deeper into his numbers. His expected ERA was far lower than what he actually posted this year, sitting around 3.45, and he struck out at 9 batters per inning in back-to-back seasons on average. His stuff is pretty good too, with an arsenal that composes of a 93 to 94 fastball, but his main weapon being a nigh unhittable slider curve that posted a 118 average opposing last year. At age 28, you'd hope he's far from past his prime, despite his injury worries, but a one-year deal means that we aren't stuck paying for an injured arm like previous occasions should the worst come to happen. So, at the very least, you've replaced either one of those like Nabil Crisma or Anthony Descalfani slots in the starting rotation, and at best, you've got a number 3 or 4 starter who might just have a season of above-average baseball left in him. He represents an improvement to the lower end of the starting rotation without a shadow of a doubt, as long as he stays consistent. And speaking of consistent, he also does seem to like pitching at Chase Field. His last appearance in the desert came last year, where he earned the W for the Nats, facing 23 batters through 5.1 innings, throwing 94 strikes, 64 balls, and striking out 3. His K to BB percentage, which is 17.4, is pretty good. And clearly the Diamondbacks like the combination of frequent strikeouts, infrequent free passes, and not giving up hard contact in the air, which is of course a key thing for pitchers at Chase Field. Now, if he can haul that kind of performance more often than not for the Diamondbacks, we may have just found a pretty good bargain bucket deal. I'll leave it up to you, dear audience, to decide whether or not signing the pitcher with the most hit batters in the National League last year is a good thing or not. Now, all of this is happening, of course, let's not forget, against the backdrop of the whole Diamondbacks pitching staff not really having a clue what's going to happen. One minute we're being told Zach Gallen has agreed to deal with the Cubs. The next minute Merrill Kelly is definitely re-signing with the Snakes. Then Zach Gallen absolutely doesn't have anything agreed, according to Jeff Passan, and everyone is very confused. The only real solid headline to come out of that whole mess in the past couple of days was that Gallen was likely to command the $50 million total contract value mark, which pretty much rules the Snakes out of it if what we've heard about Ken Kendrick cutting payroll is to be believed. But we have at least got one arm locked down coming through the door now, and he's under contract, who you'd expect to be, as it stands right now, probably the number 3 or 4 guy behind Ryan Nelson, probably also Brandon Pfaadt and Erod, even if Erod, as we'd assume, probably still can't quite get his act together, which does seem to be a recurring theme. After that, the rotation is anyone's guess. Christian Maynor is likely the number 5 right now, followed by younger guys like Cole Drake or Yumin Lin up for grabs. And you'd expect to see in the Cactus League, yeah, sure, but they are likely far too green to be a realistic option for the number 5 slot right now. And we're also not sure how fit and able somebody like Bryce Jarvis would be, not having really functioned as a true big league starter in a while. So I would guess that the priority is still to try and bring back Merrill Kelly. There's mutual interest there, it's probably one of baseball's worst kept secrets, and another worst kept secret being that the team keeps getting calls about Ketel Marte. Mike Hazen earlier today was asked about this yet again, and as expected he kept his cards close to his chest. But perhaps he can play a little bit more hardball now that another starting arm is through the door. The thought was that if Ketel was traded, it would be for a pitching haul. And now we're a little less desperate, said haul is going to have to improve in order to budge the needle. And in my opinion, that's a pretty good position to be in. Another side effect of the Diamondbacks raiding the sales section of free agency goodwill is that it saves money in the bank for other signings. Pete Fairbanks is widely understood to be in talks with the Diamondbacks right now, and that would be a big statement to make, likely commanding a paycheck to match, probably similar to the $28 million over 2-year deal Ryan Helsley just signed. That would make Fairbanks easily one of the most expensive relievers in this year's free agent class, and the highest earning Diamondbacks reliever to come in recent years, blowing $12 million for Mark Melancon out of the water. And it's definitely not the right year for the Diamondbacks to say go big or go home with the prospect of a lockout looming on the horizon. That being said, it's hard not to salivate over Fairbanks' numbers. Averaging around 9 Ks per 9, being just one of 9 pitchers to have over 20 saves every one of the last 3 years and an ERA of 2.98 in that time, that is going to be expensive to lock down, and ultimately, there's not much point signing a lights-out elite closer if your starter and your offense can't get them save opportunities to begin with. One route I would say to solving that closer problem while we wait for J-Mart and AJ Puck's elbows to knit themselves back together involves a name some of you might have forgotten, and that being Gilbert Diaz, who we knew as a starter for a while last year, but who has been reinvented as a closer in Dominican winter ball, posting a 1.15 ERA with 23 Ks and 10 saves in 15.2 innings, making him one of the top overall relievers in that league this year. So watch this space. I think there's some gems to be found outside of the major big names in relief pitching and major league names in, starting pitching as well. I talked about Ranger Suarez as a point where I was like, yeah, let's go get him. I did potentially want to see us go after, Cody Ponce, who's a Mexican guy. He's coming over from the KBO this year, but he has now gone to the Blue Jays. course, Dylan Cease has just blown everybody else out of the water with his contract going to the Blue Jays as well. Blue Jays really building up a pretty interesting rotation. They're going to have, Ponce, Scherzer. They're going to have, I'd imagine Scherzer still just keeps his spot, but I don't know who's really the ace on that rotation now. I think they probably do have to give it to Cease, given the amount of money they're giving to him. And Dbacks are not going to be able to compete with the kind of money that's flying around at the moment. It's been a very weird off-season for, so-and-so's just signed with so-and-so. Oh, they've got this much money. Devin Williams, of course, has just gone to the Mets, having, of course, now been labelled a Judas, just like Juan Soto, for basically, swapping one side of New York for the other. Personally, I think that's pretty hilarious how they broke the bank to sign Devin Williams last year, immediately got rid of the facial hair policy for him. As you can imagine, I'm probably not a fan of the Yankees facial hair policy. And then all of a sudden, he leaves and they immediately have to reinstitute it because he was the reason they got rid of it in the first place. I think that's pretty funny, and ultimately, Diamondbacks have a history with the Yankees and the Diamondbacks have a history of going against the Yankees, so yeah, stuff the Yankees. I'm enjoying that bandwagon. Instead, I think we have to really be realistic about what the Diamondbacks can afford and what the Diamondbacks are going to go after this offseason. If we can get, younger guys, like people talk about how impressive, David Hageman was in the Fall League last year, he's not going to be, anywhere near a Major League rotation unless, absolute disaster strikes with the arms again. But, Corbin Burns will still be pitching next year. We don't know really how much he's going to manage. We don't know what they're going to limit him to try and prevent a reoccurrence of that injury. But, he will be somebody who will probably join that starting rotation around the All-Star break next year. So, breaking the bank in certain areas, probably not the way to go on that one. But there's certainly value to be found in that bargain bin. We've signed a bargain bin player. Nobody says we're not going to go and do another one. Probably a little higher up on the potential how much you're going to pay for who. Somebody who caught my eye on the free agency charts in relief pitching is one Luke Weaver, who of course way back when was, I believe, part of that Paul Goldschmidt trade, coming to the desert from the Cardinals. So I don't think he was particularly impressive for the Diamondbacks. That was his time there was way before I even really discovered what baseball was. But his time in the Yankees seemed to have been amazing, and then terrible, and then amazing again, and then even worse. So, maybe we take a gamble on Luke Weaver. We are listed as one of the potential options for him. If you look on the MLB Spotlight page right now, it says Diamondbacks, Athletics, Royals as potential landing spots for Luke Weaver. Personally, I think we could very much give him a chance. It's somebody who, also is not ridiculously old compared to some of the other guys who are an option. So, yeah, Luke Weaver being an option there. But again, we are sadly a team that does need to prioritize value in this Stove League, and paying over $10 million AAV for relief pitching isn't usually the way to find value. It is really important that we stay grounded and realistic right now, especially on the anniversary of the Danby Swanson for Shelby Miller and Gabe Speyer trade. But instead of ending on that weird downbeat, I've decided that today's episode is going to be wrapped up with a fun fact instead, and that fun fact being that Mike Soroka, should his physical be successful, fingers crossed, will be the first Diamondback to hail from Calgary, Canada. So there's some food for thought for you. Is he technically a snowbird? I think probably not, unless he sticks around to play in the Fall League, at which point you're going to end up behind a major leaguer going 20 below the speed limit. On the outside to Scottsdale, which always going to be fun. Does this make me a true Phoenician now that I'm complaining about traffic in Phoenix too? I will of course be back there for spring training, so we'll have to see just how many people I manage to annoy with my driving when I get back too. Anyway, before we get on a particular rant about people coming in and causing traffic accidents outside Chick-fil-A, we're going to wrap the episode up there. I want to say thank you very much for listening, as always, to the Dbacks podcast, where we are proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, click the bell icon for notifications, yada yada, blah blah. All of that crap, wherever it is that you're watching/listening. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.